get into a little bit quickly. I mean, obviously, we're just going to get right to the fact that they're going to hopefully face the Warriors in the conference finals. So what can you tell me about the Houston Rockets death lineup?
Well, so we know what Chris Paul does. We know what James Harden does. But our death lineup basically mimics what the Warriors have around them, where, Draymond's at the 5. So to counter that, what we have is we have PJ Tucker at the 5, Ariza, Mbamute, or Gordon. We can switch between those two. And then you have Paul and Harden in the backcourt. And so what that allows you to do is run a 5-out offense. So either Chris Paul or James Harden take their turn running the pick and roll, probe the defense, and now the defense stretched so thin that really you're going to get an open look either way. You either get an open 3 or a layup from Harden. So we're seeing the team still figure out, feel each other out, but thus far, this death lineup, it's up in the NBA right now. I'm really excited to see what happens when we do match up.
More than the offense, it's even the defense, because you can notice how Clint Capella, Trevor Ariza, Luke Mbamute, they can switch on anybody. So, they can easily switch on the Warriors. And I think any of those guys, they can't, obviously no one can stop Kevin Durant, but at least I think they can give him a little bit of an issue. At least those guys can move their feet and they're long. So I think the defense is really what's most impressive about that death lineup.
Yeah, it's definitely true. We brought PJ Tucker in to be our defensive enforcer. He's a load. He's only maybe 6'5", but 5. I've never seen anyone been able to actually back him up. He's like a load. So being able to play inside and also switch, like you touched on, it's critical against the Warriors because they have so many deadly shooters, so you can't even give them that inch of space. So when you have people who are laterally quick enough and can stay with these guys, it makes their offense, it makes it a little harder for it to run. At the end of the day, it's still Durant and Curry, but, that's the most you can do, make their life as difficult.
Yeah.
And that's what that death lineup does.
So I think coming into the year, my concern with the Rockets was I was worried, would it be James Harden's team or Chris Paul's team, which of them would step back? So it really helped, I think, that Chris Paul just immediately got injured. I think that first game, they beat the Warriors. Chris Paul got injured. That was the perfect way to start the season, and then Harden was clearly the man. And now Chris Paul's come back, and they're 13-0. So do you think it was a good thing to have that injury at the beginning of the year? Do you think it not mattered?
I definitely think it was a blessing in disguise. So Chris Paul had that Chapter 3, I believe. There's some 30-minute thing that he put out over the summer about his whole thought process when he was deciding what team to go to and, training in the off season. And so we saw that whole time that he was the way he talked about James Harden, Chris Paul himself is probably a top 5 point guard already. And I think he is a legitimate argument for top 3. And so for the way that I heard him talk about James Harden, man, this guy, I've never seen the game come so easy to someone. I wasn't too worried about it. But I do think that injury was a blessing in disguise in that we saw Harden just blow up at the start of this year. He was set from 3, leading the league in points, second or third in assists. I think that really showed everyone, a lot of eyes were on Houston after the Chris Paul acquisition. It showed him that, legit, this is his team. We just gave him $200 million. He's our guy. And then Chris Paul, for him, it's he came here because he wanted to lighten the load. So that's just him from the sidelines. It's a breath of relief watching Harden do what he did the first month. And kind of gives him a primer on how to run the offense, right? You get front seat view on how to do it. So, I definitely, I do think the injury did help establish kind of that pecking order. And, the counter to that is OKC. It seems like everyone's still going through the motions because they didn't really have that. It was a little too deferential at the start of the year. Now it's they're still trying to figure it out.
Can you talk about, in terms of the offense that you guys run, what's the biggest difference when CP3 is running the point versus when Pat Beverly was there last year running the point? CP3 is much better as a point guard, but in terms of how he controls the game, what's the difference? What kind of different offense do they run now?
So, I don't know if you watch, have you seen those Coach Nick videos on YouTube? They're actually they're interesting once in a while. So I watched one and it was about that actually. So I will say that we know that Chris Paul is the point guard. So obviously he's going to be able to run this, run any offense pretty well. But with Harden, he's kind of like freestyling it. Like he just, throwing all these crazy lobs, and he's, a little looser with the ball, but he like makes some like fantastic things happen. Whereas Chris Paul is like surgical. Like he just probes the defense, just goes in and out, willing to take that mid-range shot, willing to like take the ball out if need be. So it's like a contested shot. It's a little more flash versus like, a little more like surgical, like I said. So it's hard for defenses to switch from one to the other, And also the fact, honestly, it's underrated, the fact that Harden's left-handed, Paul's right-handed. It's like, as a defense, your focus is on figuring out how to stop like Harden from coming into the paint, and then now you get Chris Paul who's willing to go in and out. It takes like a really disciplined defense to figure out how to be able to switch between, defending those play styles.
Yeah.
Even though it's the same offense, that pick and roll at the top with the rolling big man, they run it in different ways, and they're still figuring it out. But even right now, like those lineups with Paul alone and Harden alone, they're both, I believe, like plus 30 in that rating. So it's nice to watch.
I remember you told me an interesting stat where even if the entire Rockets offense runs terribly and they're stuck with the ball in Harden's hand with 3 seconds left on the shot clock, he's like still 50% or better with that step back three. Is that a stat? And they're also number 1 in defensive rating. So I wanted you to bring some crazy stats that maybe people don't know about, just to realize how hot that the Rockets are right now.
Right. So Harden is just doing some ridiculous stuff. Like he shoots, I think, like 3 or 4 step. Like I think he's like right around 3 step backs a game. Step back threes. And in isolation, he averages like 1.3 points per possession. And that's it's the most efficient in the league, and he has by far the most isolations in the league. So, like our offense, it's so pick and roll heavy that you either force the defense to try to hedge and recover, or to switch. And so Harden, whenever he gets someone who's a big man, or anyone who's doesn't have the lateral quickness to keep up with him, there's just nothing you can do, because he just lulls you to sleep with that crossover, and then he's such a low driving to the paint, so you're like, okay, I guess of the things that you'll give him, I'll give you the 3. But he's just hitting them at a rate right now, so it's, it's just like, I honestly, like, I think him, KD, LeBron are like the 3 best isolation players, like easily. Like those guys, it's basically like you pick your poison. They're going to get you one way or another. So it's the step backs that Harden added. The step back threes, he's hitting them so well this year that it's basically defenses have like no recourse.
I mean, I've always been a Harden hater because I just think the way he plays is so ugly. As a basketball player, I don't like the way he throws himself into other people, but it's 10 plus free throws a game for average, and that does get you warmed up and feeling good. So this probably will be the year that Harden wins the MVP. I have to give it to him, and he's due. I mean, he's been close like 2 or 3 years, so Harden's going to win the MVP this year. Even though I hate it. I hate it.
Okay, so I understand where you're coming from. I empathize. But I think people look at the free throw thing and they say, oh, he can just get 30 because he's able to get, he's able to trick the refs. But, if it was so easy, there'd be so many players that do it. The thing I will say is they instituted this rule over the offseason, the Harden rule, about, how you have to be going up. Which I will fully acknowledge Harden did. And he did that in years past, and it made the game slower. You watch have all the free throws. But this year, he had this rule instituted to slow down his game. And what has he done? He's shooting his highest percentages. He's hitting more from threes, leading the league in scoring, still assisting. I think still over 9 a game. So he basically is a big F you to the league. I think I love it. I like the fact that he's stepped up. Every time he gets challenged, I feel like
he's playing great. I got to give him his props. And so I usually try to keep these at 10 minutes with the way that this app works, man. Josh, I appreciate you being on. That was awesome, and I'm gonna have you again, man.
Yeah, anytime, man.